Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Nerd Culture. I'm your host, Travis Troller, and today I have a special guest with me. I have Josh Needle over on Lasting Light Media. Say hi, Josh.
Hi, Travis. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, Josh. Now, for those of the people who are watching this video that don't know, can you explain a little bit of what Lasting Light Media is?
Yeah, Last Night Media. It's a kind of a studio, independent project thing we do where we do just short films, video projects, and right now we do, if you've seen from Travis, a show called Lasting Insight, where him and our friend Cal just talk about whatever we want, and it's really fun. And you should come watch what we do because we have a lot of fun over there.
Exactly. And also, I can vouch for that because obviously, like what Josh said, I'm on both channels. And here at Nerd Culture and over there, it's very fun environment. So make sure to go check that out. I can second that. But today, let's get down to the nitty gritty. You clicked on this video for a reason. We're talking about, of course, The Last of Us Part 2. And we're going to have at least a few topics that we're going to be talking about, ranging from the logistical mechanics of the game and what we saw was different, to the overall progression having to do with skill points and skill trees, and then overall story, like what kind of cinematic decisions they decided to make and how we felt about that. So a lot is going to be packed into this. And full disclosure, this is going to be a two-part series. So just so we can show channels a little bit of love, first part's going to be here at Nerd Culture, but make sure to check out the second part over on Lasting Light Media and give both channels some love. That being said, let's just dive right in and let's start talking about The Last of Us.
Let's do it.
So this is where I want to start the conversation. First of all, I think let's talk about both of us as background, our experiences with Last of Us. Now,
Okay.
I can vouch for myself, and I feel like I can vouch for you as well. When it comes to The Last of Us, I think both of us can agree that when that game came out, we couldn't get our hands on it fast enough.
Yes.
And when we did play it, it just us both being movie buffs, we just, by the time we saw the end credits, we were just probably teary-eyed and just emotions
Yes.
were running high, because personally to me, the first one, it set such a high standard for cinematic and very heartfelt and
Yeah.
touching but action-packed gameplay. It was like Uncharted, but
Yeah.
to a more soap opera-y level, but in a good way.
Just the first scene alone, the whole opening.
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. The amount of people I've seen when that game came out that did like walkthroughs, that they once that scene happened where Joel lost his daughter and everything, everybody starts. I almost like wept. I'm like, I'm only 5 minutes in. It's ridiculous. So like, it really, they did such a good job of setting the standard of this is what this game is going to be like. So get ready.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing thing because it's almost like it's like a TV show that everybody can like fall in love with. It's like you love
sure.
these characters and you want to see them succeed, but there's so much turmoil.
Yeah. I come at it from even beyond that. I was a huge fan of just Naughty Dog, their games in general, back in 2000.
Because they make Uncharted.
They made Uncharted. They also
Yeah.
made games that I loved when I was younger. And
Such as
what's it called?
Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah.
No.
I like Ratchet and Clank.
But
No,
they didn't
the one
make
with the one with not it's the little animal that jumps. What's his name?
Spyro?
No.
No, there's no way. Why am I
No,
suggesting
they did not do
Spyro?
Spyro.
That's like way.
Crash Bandicoot. That's what they did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That would make sense why it was in the game. Okay.
But I really loved that game when I was younger. And they did the Uncharted games. The Uncharted, the first three games was like one of my favorite like franchises at the time before Uncharted, before The Last of Us came out. And then I saw the trailers and stuff for The Last of Us. It looked like something way more mature than they had ever done. That's what it was. It way
was
more
a
violent.
big selling point. The fact that it had that very aggressive, dark world entity to it, like that, that really made it stick out from the other games that we've seen in the past.
And when I played it for the first time, I was just like, I think this is my favorite game I've ever played, and it has been for the last 7 years, and it's just it is, to me, it's a masterpiece. It's perfect.
I can agree with you. I mean, I personally, I'm a big fan of obviously The Last of Us. That's why we were talking about it, and I'm a big fan of the Uncharted games. I've played all of them, and I've always had a special place like in my heart for Uncharted because they had that cinematic feel. But there's something about The Last of Us that really takes it a step further because of the fact that like Uncharted, you can kind of get carried away and like just kind of do all this outlandish stuff. But with Last of Us, it always really grounds you to the feel like to really emphasize you are just human in this story, and it really just attacks you from all sides and all angles, and that it just did that so well that I'm like, I've never seen this before, and you have to give respect to the fact that they were able to to do that, because games are usually like an escape into something more
Yeah.
fantastical. But the fact that they gave such a sense of realism to a story and yet made it so captivating was honestly, you couldn't do more to give them such a strong pat on the back over at Naughty Dog for
Yeah,
executing such a well game.
to this day, I mean, what they did with that game is just incredible. And
Yeah.
yeah, I love the characters, the story, and I mean, it's not exactly that complex of a story. It's just two characters going across the country to, get a virus vaccine. But it's a really powerful journey. It's a really great exploration between Joel and Ellie as characters and their similarities and differences, and seeing them bond together, and kind of that Joel lost his daughter dynamic to filling in the holy law. So it's just, there's a lot going on in that game on a thematic level that I just really, really love.
Yeah, and I will say before we start getting into the actual The Last of Us Part 2, I will say, just for full disclosure, for anybody who is for some reason watching this and they don't know the full backstory, first off, this is going to be spoiler heavy. It's a little too late to say it now, but where The Last of Us Part 1 left us off was the fact that the game was about Joel basically kind of traversing through this world of a zombie apocalyptic world, and he basically crossed paths with a young girl by the name of Ellie, who they find out is
Immune.
immune to the infection. So they basically travel across the lands in order to get her to a force known as the Fireflies to potentially find a cure. And then when they finally get there, they find out that there is a cure, and it is possible to make one, but it would sacrifice killing Ellie. And then at that point, Joel made such a connection with Ellie as a character, kind of saw her as his own daughter, that he couldn't let that happen. So he basically kind of killed everybody and ran off with her. And that's kind of where the story laid, with the fact that there is this big secret that Joel has been hiding from her. And they're still living in this very dangerous world where there are zombies, but there are also other clans of groups that are wanting to just attack for territory.
Yeah.
It's a very end all be all type of situation they put themselves in. So you had that dynamic going into this, and that's where this game sets off. And then that's going to explain more when we get more into the story aspect of it, which will be later on in these videos. But for starters, now that we have that out of the way, we know what our passions are for The Last of Us and everything. I want to get into overall gameplay first of all. Let's talk about the game aspect of it, and specifically I want to talk about logistics of the game. Now, we're a big fan of the original. I want to know, though, your personal opinion, Josh. What do you feel worked this time around for The Last of Us Part 2? And do you feel they did anything differently, or do you feel that they maybe copy and pasted again and got away with it?
So I think this is kind of a hybrid as far as gameplay of Uncharted 4 and the original Last of Us. I think they took a lot of elements that they implemented in Uncharted 4, which is another Naughty Dog game, and kind of used some of those, like such as the rope, the climbing, and the swinging.
That is true. Yeah.
And the sliding, and I think they used it well. Yeah.
Did you I figured this out. You know how you can like lay down and go prone?
Yep.
In the game, did you ever try to do it while running?
No.
Oh, I swear to God, dude, I did it by accident. I do it all the time now. When you run and you go prone, they like kind of like do their jog, but then they go, ah! And every time I had to go lay down or crawl under something, I'd be like, I got this. And I just start crawling. It's the funniest thing ever.
I'm gonna have to try that when I replay the game.
Once you do it, you never lay down the right way anymore.
Yeah. So then, as far as like taking stuff from the original Last of Us, I think it did it just pretty much took the same general concept and what it's doing and just did it better, gave it more detail.
So here's my question: How do you think it did it differently? Like visually, what do you think they did differently?
Well, first of all, visually, the game is stunning to look at.
Absolutely. The graphics in comparison. Graphics is a whole other story.
I spent a lot of time in photo mode.
You know what? See, and this is where me and you differ. I completely disregarded the fact there was
I used to not even care about photo mode. Now I use it for every game I play.
But to be fair, I didn't use photo mode because I mainly wanted to have a very uninterrupted, no commentary, type of playthrough. And that's my own personal plug for the playthroughs for The Last of Us. That's all uploaded on Nerd Culture. Go check that out. But
yeah, just as far as photo mode goes, it's like I used to not care about it. And then like sometimes you see these games are so beautiful to look at. You see this like, oh man, this would be a great picture, and you're like, oh yeah, there's photo mode. So just pause the game and I feel
like you weren't a photo mode guy until you played Spider-Man. You were like,
no, that was the game that got me into it.
Yeah, I knew it.
That and God of War.
Wait, did God of War have a photo mode?
I think so. Or maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember. I'm pretty
I'd
sure
be
it had one.
surprised. I'd be surprised if it did.
I'm
Let's just
pretty
say that.
sure. Yeah, it did have one. It did have a photo mode. I remember that.
PS4 tends to make games that have
Yeah,
photo modes.
yeah,
It's interesting.
yeah. But yeah, so taking stuff from the first one, like obviously, the crawling, obviously, like you mentioned, that's a little bit more advanced this time.
Yeah.
Stealth through like tall grass and stuff. That stuff. That's
Ooh.
also they pulled that from Uncharted 4, I think.
So here's my question to you actually.
Yeah,
So yeah, you say that they pulled that from Uncharted 4. When I played this game specifically this time around, I don't know if my memory doesn't serve me right, and I would have to go back and double check. But in comparison to
yeah,
The Last of Us, then to Part Two, I knew there was a stealth mechanic that it's one of those things where when you play, you have the two options of stealth or all out. And usually, if you're someone like me, you go into an area where you try to be as stealthy as possible and try to get away with it, or
yeah,
you get halfway through and then someone catches you and it turns into a brawl.
yeah.
But did you find that the stealth was a little bit more harder to execute this time around?
It was a little bit more up to the player rather than
How
just.
so?
There was one thing that I actually really loved that I found that you could do, and I started doing it a lot more. Where the first game kind of really it forces you to pretty much take on every enemy, whether it's through stealth or through a gun battle.
Yeah.
But this game, were times where you could kind of just sneak your way into a location, see a bunch of what are the wolf, I think they're called.
Oh
See a bunch
yeah.
of them. They're walking around, and you can kind of just hide. You hear a clicker or something, you just throw it, and they see it, and then a clicker comes out, and it just takes them all out, and I'm just gonna sneak away, untouched, not bothered, and fight
Now that I think
this.
about it, that was probably smart. I bet like I think they implemented those because that was like if you're going to do stealth, the only way to get away with it is to do that because I
Yeah,
did it the harder way. I'm like if I do stealth, I sneak in and my goal
just
is to
sneak.
kill
Yeah,
everybody. Like
behind every
sneak
single person.
attack everybody
I
before
yeah,
like that was the hard part because it always turned out they put them everybody knows they still have the same mechanic like every other game has where every single npc it's got a pattern and you try to follow it but it just for some reason this time around when I played this game it was like I would wait so long for an opening I'd finally take somebody out but then somehow there would always be somebody that would spot me or I would take somebody out a second too late and by the time I finished and tried to lay back down somebody had already got
yeah,
their eyes on me and I'm like oh man
yeah.
like I could never the one thing I had about that game, and it wasn't really a gripe, it was just I felt like I couldn't have a personal achievement, was any area I went into where I had the option to be stealthy, I tried and I could never get out of it on the other side fully being stealthy. It always turned into a brawl at the end, every time. I could never fully be stealthy in that game.
I've
And I
managed to
tried.
I managed to avoid it a good amount of times. Not every time, not even most of the time, but just there was a several times where you could just get in and out without getting touched, and it was
Yeah.
really cool.
Do you think now personally after you say that and it is a good point that you bring up because I did notice those moments where you could use things in the environment to let them duke it out and
Yeah,
just sneak away. Do you think they implemented it a little bit more this time around so the stealth was kind of meant more for causing a distraction getting in and out without and getting into the least amount of like physical hand-to-hand confrontations as possible? Do you think that was the type of stealth they wanted to go for this time around?
I think it was a little bit of everything. I think they were kind of trying to, like I said, leave it up to the player. They were trying to
Yeah,
make
that's
it
fair.
as customizable as possible, give you as personal of an experience as they could.
I could agree with that. I think it's one of those things where it's like leaving it up to player, but more it's like how good it's like basically saying the game's only going to be as good as you are. So if you suck, it's going to suck.
Like
And I
if you
sucked.
like if you're the type of person that wants to do that, it'll give you as many opportunities to do that as possible.
Yeah.
But if you're not good at it, then it's going to be just as hard as it is.
Oh, and you know what? And then I don't know, I don't mean to cut you off, but then that brings me into my next point. So besides the stealth and everything, they did have the same mechanics of like being able to craft
Yeah.
items and everything that can help with
That
more
was much
stealth.
better, I think, this time. Much, much better.
I would agree it was too. I know that they did it in the first one. I think roughly. I know how you could like craft shivs like in the first one and everything. And this one you can still do it. But I liked how you could have a melee weapon and you can customize it with your material. So that way it could be a stronger one. So that way if you had to use it, it's a one-hit kill instead of bashing, and then they finally go down.
Yeah.
So I thought that was useful. But I also found out with the gameplay for actual combat, like gunfights and whatnot. Um, I I guess I just hadn't played in a while. I thought all my skill for The Last of Us had just gone out the window because I remember playing it and I got so good at it that it was
Yeah,
like I would just be like
yeah,
pow headshot because those are always one hit
yeah.
kills. I would sway so much even with
It's
after
really
all
hard.
the
It's
yeah,
really hard.
it's so even
I
after all the attachments, I still swayed and would miss and just start doing body shots and it would take
I like
forever to kill
I
people.
refamiliarized myself with it because I replayed both the original and Uncharted 4 before I replayed
Oh, so
the
you
last one.
got
So I
your
kind of
yeah,
got
you
myself
got your
familiar
skill
with
back.
the story and also the gameplay of their last game. So it kind of caught me up to speed.
Yeah. Well, then that's where you had me differently because you basically had practice. Me, I was going off of the last game I played like that was Uncharted 4, and that was when it came out. So how many? I bet that's a year almost that since that game's been out. So I've clearly been out of the loop a little bit. So there, of course, my aiming was a little unsteady.
What difficulty did you play on?
I played it on normal. I had to
Okay.
play it on normal. So full disclosure to anybody that knows me, I don't mind a challenge, but if it's something like Last of Us where there's a story to it, I don't want to be held down by the gameplay being so awfully hard that I can't even enjoy the story anymore because
Yeah.
I'm like, these people are killing me in one hit. I want to be able to have a challenge but still get through it reasonably well.
I That's something I want to touch on too. I don't know if you noticed it, how the customizability of the difficulty, how you can kind of customize each element of the difficulty.
Well, I mean, I have a horrible memory. I just remember it being, do you want to play on, very,
Yeah,
very easy,
like you
normal,
can
hard?
do that, but then you can also set it to like, do you want aiming to be this level of difficulty? Do you want this other thing to be this level of
Oh, you know
difficulty?
what? I
Yeah,
actually remember that
yeah,
that popping up, and I
and
think
that's
that's
really
where I
cool.
ran into I think that's where I ran into an issue because I kind of glanced over that and I was like, just start the game. So I probably kept my settings a little more difficult than I would have liked to, but still, it was still a fun experience. So I think it's still doable to work with the standard settings that
Yeah,
they give you.
yeah, yeah,
I don't really know anybody that really would enjoy the game if like you had aim assist. All you had to do was like pull the aim button, like the left trigger, and then it just goes right to their
yeah,
head. Like that's no fun.
yeah,
You got to have a risk of like trying to hit them, especially in like cinematic cutscenes where it's like live gameplay. You get knocked down. There's a moment where you have to like aim and try to shoot at
yeah,
their head. Like I love that stuff.
yeah. Me
It
too.
really, ooh, it gets your heart pumping. The amount of times I would get shot at by somebody and it does the reflex where you hit the ground and there's like 2 seconds of delay before you can pull out your gun. I would always like I'd get my sights on them a second too late. Like I always felt like I was really slow. That was my one gripe about the game. I felt like I was a split hair too slow compared to everybody else.
Yeah, I think the only thing I can think of that I didn't really like, I think it was kind of a step, not even a step back, just something they added that I didn't like was the safe, the thing where you have to unlock safes to
Oh,
get
you didn't
things.
like that?
It was just, I thought it was unnecessary. That was
I
you have to
honestly
do a lot to like get them open. Like you got to listen to the sound. You got to turn 1 through 100. It's just
so here's my thing. You told me that specifically. You told
yeah,
me a while ago that if you listen for the sound, it'll open. I tried after you told me that.
yeah.
Bullshit.
Oh, it
I
worked for
didn't
me.
I didn't hear anything. I literally sat there and went through all 100 dials. I'm like, I don't hear anything. But I will counteroffer that by saying that there was one safe in the entire game I interacted with that I could not figure out how to open. But the rest of them, they made it fairly easy for you to like just kind of wander around in close proximity to figure out the visual cue because
Yeah,
they're usually in the same building, so it's
yeah.
not that
I
hard. And I
never,
kind of enjoyed it.
I never picked up the visual cue. I just scrolled
It
through and
was
got the
it
click.
was the littlest things. Like one of
Oh,
them was like it's in an office and it's there, and all of a sudden there's like a note on the table and it says like we're going out, blah blah blah. Make sure to lock up. The code is the same as your shift number, and then you go right out in the hall, and then there's the shift. It's like they make
yeah,
it easy enough for you so that way you feel like you achieve something, but it's not that difficult. But
yeah,
it's still fun because I like being able to be like, oh, I noticed it. Cool, I got the visual cue. I unlock it, and most of the time they just give you resources that you could use because you run through them like crazy if things aren't going your way. That's a
yeah,
big thing that they always do in The Last of Us.
yeah.
And then one thing I will say is besides the safes and everything, I did notice at the beginning of the game they do tend to have it where this time around they made it a little more open instead of linear, but it was
Yes.
still pretty
I
linear.
love that. I thought it was something, it gave you for people like me that like to explore,
Yeah.
it gave me a little more to do because the first one it's just like, I mean, it's still it has a little bit of open worldness and exploration to it, but this one's like, especially during everything in, I think it's not in Seattle. Is it in Seattle?
It's Seattle, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's when they're kind of just going through buildings and stuff. Like there are hidden scenes that you can find like the Take on Me scene with the guitar. I don't know if you got that.
Oh my God, no, I didn't
Yeah,
get that. The only
yeah,
one I got was way later in the game. There was an arcade I got to go into, and
yeah,
I saw a PS. Oh, I saw a PS4 in someone's apartment,
yeah,
like plugged into the TV. And then there was another one. At one point in the story, when you're Ellie and you're sneaking into the base, you there's like that Asian chick who's near the water, and you like interrogate her. She's playing on a PSP, like
yeah.
obvious stuff like that. Like I thought that was a little tip of the hat to Sony.
Yeah, like there's a scene in if you find it, if you go into the right building, there's like a music store, and Ellie sits down and plays "Take
Oh,
on Me" on the
never mind.
guitar. Yeah.
I did that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
But
sorry.
like,
I thought you meant like you saw like one of their guitars or
no, no,
something. I
no.
don't know
Yeah.
why I
That, like,
thought
but
that.
like that whole scene is like if you don't do the exploration, you're not going to get to that scene.
Exactly.
That's
And
like
it's kind of
yeah,
like a fun character
yeah,
moment.
yeah. And there's stuff like and also just going around finding all these little like Easter eggs throughout those buildings, and also I like the horseback riding. It's actually a
I
lot of
thought it was
fun.
good. I
Yeah,
thought it was
actually,
interesting.
I'm not a huge Red Dead person, so I like mainly for the gameplay, less so like the story and world of that those games. I like that, but the gameplay of the horseback riding is a lot more smooth in comparison,
Hmm.
and I really liked that a lot. So that was
Well, I
fun.
will say if you're not a fan of Red Dead, I mean there is similarities I feel with the horseback riding. Obviously, very close
Yeah,
mechanics, but I think for you, it's one of those things where you like it because they used it in the right moderation.
yeah,
You're not forced to do it every two
yeah.
seconds, but when you do have it,
I
it's a
don't have to.
quick option, but you're
I
getting
don't
from
have to
spot to
feed
spot,
and
and then
pet
you're
my horse every
yeah,
15
yeah,
minutes.
yeah. They're not. It's none of that. So I would agree with you because you don't need that tediousness on there. I also
Yeah,
find it funny how every single scene when you are on a horse and you're getting like those gunfights you're pushing through, nobody thinks to shoot the horse.
yeah. It just kind of just you just hop off and just runs away in a different
Yeah,
direction.
exactly. I'm like, okay, I'll call you in a minute. But
Just
I thought,
miraculously finds him again.
oh yeah, like it's always there. Like which I do like because God forbid I have played games where they have the horse thing and all of a sudden you try to call for it and it's nowhere to be found. You kind of have to walk for a minute until it finally shows up. I'm like, where the hell were you? Like like you don't want a game like this. You don't want something like that to slow you down and give
Yeah,
pause in any way. So I think they're really good about keeping the pace you want to keep.
yeah.
Um, one thing I wanted to touch on really quick when you're talking about like the things like playing "Take on Me" on the guitar, I noticed there was a big consistency of playing the guitar in
I
this game.
lo-
Do you like that mechanic?
I liked it sort of. I first of all,
Sort of. So
there are
no.
people. First of all, there are people out there that somehow know how to play this guitar like it's a professional guitar. I don't know how. Because I don't know if you've seen videos of people playing it like on YouTube.
Oh yeah, I saw the lead one of the lead singers for Blink 182 playing
Yeah,
one of his
yeah,
songs
they're
on it.
like playing it like I'm just like, oh, they're just gonna play like a couple notes at a time. No, they're playing like three strings at a time. Like they're playing full note chords, and I'm like,
Oh, I
how are
think it had
you?
something to do with yeah, like the swiping. Like if you just
I'm just
flick it,
like,
it's like a
yeah,
single
yeah, and
string.
there are people that are like tapping the pad like this and like doing the. I'm just like, how do you do this?
I didn't get that. I was just good enough to be like, okay, point in that chord and then try to swipe. And
Yeah,
it would be a pluck or a strum, but it was
yeah,
never up to me what it was.
yeah, yeah. Um, because it's cute. It's nice. I like the guitar, just the scenes with the guitars, like the
Yeah.
actual like story scenes, but and I like the way it's used throughout the story, like thematically. But
Yeah, which we will get into because I would
yeah,
agree with you that there's
yeah,
more of the symbolism to the guitar,
yeah.
and I think that's why it's been
I did,
implied so much.
yeah. I think it's really more there to help the player make an actual connection with it, rather than to actually be a fun um, mechanic for you to use. I mean, there are people, like I said, there are people that are actually figuring out how to play full on songs with it, so that's
Yeah,
cool. But for me, I'm just like, just struck, strum, hit the pad, hit the arrow this way, like you know what I mean. Um,
yeah.
but it's cool. I didn't think it was necessary, but it's I don't mind it.
I would honestly kind of, besides it being used for the sake of like, there were moments you could tell it was either something you found to do on the side or it was meant for the story. You had to do
Yeah,
it in order to progress the story. And in those moments, not bad. But the Take on Me portion, I remember when I did play that and she actually went through the whole song. I remember three-quarters of the way through, I'm just sitting there, I'm going, wait, is she actually gonna finish the entire song? Did I just like is something gonna happen? Like I'm expecting the story to progress in some way, and afterwards she
it's
just
just a
sit
regular
down.
tune. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm just like, oh, okay. So things like that, not bad. It paints more of a color to the world, but I don't think
yeah,
it's necessary either. I would agree with you. But overall, I think them making that a mechanic where you actually have to take control of it. I think it. I agree with you. Connects with the characters more and the
yeah,
symbolism behind the guitar.
yeah,
Because if it was just something you saw, you could probably get it, but they're forcing you to put yourself firsthand into that that symbolism, and into that connection. So I
That's
think that is interesting.
that scene you mentioned. Also, another thing before we get into the story is something that I love about video games, especially video games like this, because you would never get a scene like that in a movie. Because a movie would have to tell this entire story in 2.5 hours, and you don't have time to do little moments like that.
Hmm.
And this is just something that I think Naughty Dog's doing really well, is being able to tell these massive, really intense, really emotional, and like powerful stories. Um, and they're telling it in a video game, and I think it's a testament to how strong video games can be in
Hmm.
storytelling when you can do things like that and it works.
Yeah. Yeah. And also the fact that they can go routes and take decisions that can be perceived as controversial, but
Yeah,
that's really good because the fact that we can have such a creative freedom with video
yeah,
games is very nice, which
yeah,
again we'll get into. I want to go over one more point mainly about logistics and gameplay and all that stuff. So the skills, the skill tree, the progression. Let's get into progression really quick.
yeah,
Now, I'm not talking about necessarily the whole dynamic that we will address in a little bit, which is
yeah,
the half is Ellie. The first half is Ellie, for the second half is Abby. I'm more talking about how both characters basically have slightly the similar but their own skill trees
yeah.
to work with that you can unlock through finding collectibles like hunting manuals and all that stuff. I just wanted to get your opinion on how well do you think that was executed? Because me real quick, I think that having to find manuals to unlock special ones was kind of interesting. And I felt like they weren't hard to find. They kind of always were in my path. So
Yeah,
they just kind of showed up. And I think the one thing I had a gripe about was the fact that I looted like a son of a bitch. And I
yeah,
still feel like I could barely get, you know, one skill tree by itself completed, and there were so many skills I'm like, I need that now because this
yeah,
is my problem. So I
yeah,
felt like they didn't provide me with enough loot in order to get the skills that I needed. But
yeah.
then again, that plays into the not everything's handed to you,
It's
so it's
pretty
kind of like
much,
you have to pick and
yeah.
choose.
It's just a matter of, can you not die as much as possible and retain everything that you get throughout the game. And it's like, that's, I mean, it's just, you have to be really, really skilled to be able to get all these things. I was not able to complete
Wait, hold
any
on.
of
Do
them.
you lose your You don't lose your stuff when you die.
Some of it.
What? You lose your stuff when you die?
I think so.
I don't think so, man. Well,
Maybe I'm wrong.
maybe.
I don't
Maybe
know.
I never noticed. If anything, maybe they take a little off the top, but I never noticed. I thought if you died, you still just kind of come
Well,
back with what you had.
I mean more in terms of like health, the what's it called, health packets.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was a
Um,
whole other story.
just
There was
because
at
I have
one
to keep
point in the
reusing
game.
them.
Yeah, I know. There was one point in the game where I couldn't. I ran out of health packs. I only had like one, and I could not for the life of me find enough rags and stuff to be able
Yeah,
to
because it's like
craft another one.
you have to keep getting all this stuff, and the only thing, you have to make enough health packets so you can like keep using them. But then I use them all. I can't make anything else. So
Yeah, and
um,
also pro tip: if you're somebody who plays this game or wants to play this game or wants to replay it, I don't know. Get the skill for all characters that require health packs to be more efficient.
yeah,
I swear to God, because
yeah.
the fact that when you first start off, you waste all that time with a health pack and it
It's like
gives you like a
a
little
little.
chunk.
Yeah.
I'm like, nope, that's not going to do it because the second I finish, the amount of times I would just
Someone's
hit
gonna
the
shoot me, and
last.
you're gonna go back down.
Exactly. I was like, there we go, dead. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. So yes, that they had certain perks where it was absolutely essential to have, or you were going to have such a rough time with the game.
Yeah,
But overall, skill trees, I thought it was pretty interesting. I think they had the designated crafting skill tree, being able to craft more stuff with less materials, craft things faster. They had things like stealth, which allowed you to, like I guess move faster while prone or crouched and everything like that. Maybe not take out people silently a little bit quicker. They had stuff for like crafting bombs, like for when you want to be on the offensive. And I guess that is up to personal preference because I try to put more of my skills into the stealthier aspect of it instead of the bomb
yeah.
stuff. But I just wanted to get your take. How well do you think they divvied that up, and what was your experience with it? Were you able to achieve kind of getting all the skills that you wanted, or did you feel like there was some pushback?
I was not able to achieve everything,
Hmm.
but I did. I kind of, I don't ever really kind of go for one in particular. Usually, I mean, there's exceptions, but I tried to kind of just balance it out evenly. Like every time I would be able to move up anything, just the next one over, like balance it out, kind of at least keep everything equally progressing a little bit.
Hmm.
Um,
Are you one of those people where it's like if you have the four skill trees, you just do put one here
yeah,
and put one for the first one? Oh, so you don't ever like kind of like I
there
do
are
like
there are
I add
some.
on.
If
Yeah,
I'm like, I really need this one because it would really help me with this, I'll probably like just dump them all in one and like really, really help me. But
yeah.
usually I'll try to just balance it out equally,
Hmm.
just to keep it going at a steady rate.
Yeah, see, fell into the trap of I would have done that. I usually do that for games, and I have in the past when the skills when they executed it poorly, actually, where the skills didn't matter enough to affect gameplay to the point where, like, I'll just do it in one order and whatever I get. But this one really forced me to have to pick and choose. So I would have it where I would want the skill for this tree, but I'm like, I need to get that third perk in this one. So I just dumped all my money into that so I could get it so I could not die so much.
Yeah.
So it's one of those
Yeah.
things where it's a
The
real give
only
and take.
I think the only reason I do it that way is just because I know that if I do like too much in one, I'm not going to get some other one that I'm going to end up needing later. So I'd rather be able to
That's true.
get all of them at least somewhat above average or at average levels. So I can
I
have
mean,
everything.
it's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I know games usually when they give you skill trees, they never the resources you need the pills and stuff to be able to put towards that. I
Yeah.
know that games they deliberately do that where they don't give you so much that you can unlock all of them because then it's like, what kind of player are you? So that way you can
Yeah.
start putting towards that. So that way you know what kind of side you want to go with. I thought it was good, but I felt like, and I was playing it on normal where it should have not been so difficult, and I was looting like crazy. I felt like I still couldn't get most of the perks that I feel like I needed for the type of gameplay I wanted to do after picking a side. So I felt that was a little aggressive in
Yeah.
execution.
And one thing I want to ask, what did you think of all the bosses in this one compared to the first one? And also the clickers and how they kind of evolved them?
Yeah, so here's my thing about that. I've always hated clickers because of the fact that because they did this in the first one and it was just it really gets to me sometimes the
Which
fact
one?
that they
What?
it's the fact that the clickers of course are the type where you have to sneak up
Yeah.
and you have to kill them with a shiv. The one thing I
Either a
really
shiv or
loved
knock them out with something. Yeah.
exactly, and or you have to shoot them
Or
before they reach you because
blow their head
it's
off. Yeah.
yeah, it's one of those things where if they get to you, like if
You're
they
dead.
are aware of you and they get to you, it's automatic,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're done. And I'm
Like
like, come on,
you can't punch them out or anything
yeah,
unless they're
like
stunned.
they sometimes give you the courtesy of they grab onto you and you can like push them off, but then after that, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter
They
because
give you
I
one
remember
shot.
yeah, like I remember there was one point where one grabbed me and I was able to push him off. The second they pushed, both of us were like staggering to get our footing. And by the time I got my footing and I was able to run again, it just jumped back on me. I'm like, what's the point of pushing them away?
Yeah.
So they still have the mechanic of, you know, certain enemies you have to like have a shiv or a knife.
Yeah.
Thank God I
She has,
loved playing as Ellie because she
she
had a
has a
blade.
knife. That
So I
made
was like,
things so
thank
much better.
God. I was
Um,
that made so much. The second I saw that she had a blade and I was able to go up and just stab her, I didn't have to keep making shits. I was like, thank you.
yeah.
But then you play as Abby, and then that gets taken away. So I'm like,
Yeah.
God damn it.
We'll get into this stuff, the
Yeah.
more comparison stuff later. But did you notice the gameplay and how Abby plays was similar to Joel?
Yeah, I did. So,
Yeah.
and again, I'm going to touch on this, but I'll say now, I have a good feeling that Abby was made physically in stature how she was for the sake of making another Joel. And I will delve into that when we get to the
Yeah.
story thing. But diverting back to
There's a lot of comparisons between a lot of
yeah.
different characters that we can go into.
Yeah, but and I think I want to get into that next. And this one thing I want to finish up with on this chunk about gameplay overall. I think bosses, that's a good topic. As far as the zombies kind of go, the clickers have always been like a little bit of annoying, a nuisance, but I was still able to get around them and kill them properly to the point where they weren't that big of a deal. Regular zombies, they're always fine. It's the ones where it was like the big boomer type guys that would like
Yeah.
always like puff off,
Yeah.
like they had the cysts on them and the smoke would come out.
Those were a new addition, and then there was also that one other I don't remember what it's called, the one that has like 7 heads in it or whatever.
Yeah, it was like a massive
evolving
thing. Yeah, that one killed me so many times because I would shoot it and it would just like peel off one and then it would keep coming at me.
It took me longer to do that than the final boss battle at the end of the
Dude,
game.
I agree with you because what they made it so ridiculous about it was the fact that for that monster, they do it where it does melee swings, and if you happen to be in any close vicinity, it automatically turns into an instant death. And I had it where I died where I was standing in front of it. It swung at me, and I dodged to the side, and his hand clearly missed. Next thing I know, it cut to me in its grasp, and it just killed me. I'm like, wait, what happened? I wasn't even close to it. So like there were things like that made it a little interesting. Again, I respected that because I like having it where it's like, all right, this is a big a big fight you got to do. It's going to be hard, but you need to like, we're putting you in the situation. You cannot leave until you kill it. And it's a lot of close calls. So I like that they put so much stakes to it. It's just, enemies that aren't necessarily bosses, but they're just, like you said, the newer additions, like those exploder guys.
Yeah.
I felt they were really irritating because they were one of those guys where you can't sneak up and stab them. And when you shoot them, they take a bunch of bullets until they die. And also they move so fast that you'll shoot them a couple times. And by the time you turn around and take 2 steps and try to reload, they're already behind you. And they like.
Yeah. How did you finally kill that thing? Like, what did you do? Just keep shooting it?
Oh, for the big dude?
Yeah.
After dying a bunch of times, I shot it a bunch until I finally had one peel off. And then after that, I just kept running from it. I had the flamethrower, and I would just burn it as much as I could, and then ran away, and then pecked at it, ran away, pecked at it, until eventually it finally died. And, and it took so long. I just kept
running around trying to find as many other things I could use as possible, and just shooting it with the shotgun. One other thing we can touch on is the weapons in this game, and the way you can upgrade them is a big improvement from the first game.
I believe so. One thing I had an issue with, but both characters, they have it where you can get like a holster, so that way you can switch between your guns quicker instead of like wasting the time trying to switch them out. Even when that was applied, I still felt a lot like when I was in a gunfight, especially with like somebody like the big dude, I would run out of bullets for one, and I just wouldn't have enough time to take a few steps back and switch to my other one without it hitting me and killing me. I felt like even with the upgrades, I still didn't have enough time to switch between my guns, and it turned it into a lot of me accidentally over pressing buttons, and I was fidgeting through my guns to the point where while I'm like, why do you have the bow out? I wanted the handgun, and then I'd get killed. So I felt it was a little sluggish this time around. Not horrible, but I did have some issues with it.
Yeah. I liked it overall. And what I like about this game too, over the first one, is you can first one's kind of just, I'm going to use whatever gun I have because I don't have much ammo in any of them, so I'm just going to use whatever I can. This one, you can almost have a favorite weapon. At least in my case, I felt like it kind of makes it easier for that to be the case. Mine was probably the shotgun, just because it's the most effective. And it's also
when I turned into, I always had that thing equipped because it was like, when in doubt, pull the shotgun.
That thing never fails ever.
It really does. The amount of times you're getting overrun, you can literally, as long as you aim here up, it's always a one shot, or for some odd chance you have to do 2. But it's like it's always to get out of bad situations.
Oh, one other thing I want to mention about the gameplay, and it's maybe more with not so much the gameplay, but kind of what the game developers were trying to do is, did you notice a lot of, like, when you would go kill someone, they would yell out someone else's name or something? They'd be like, Gerald, or something. Like, you would kill.
Oh yeah, like they're calling for one of their friends.
Yeah, it would become a little more personal.
I kind of noticed that, but to be honest, every time those scenarios happen where they were like calling out, I didn't hear what they had to say. I just heard their voice. I'm like, fuck. So I just got so mad that I completely ruined it. So, but now that you mentioned
it was interesting. I mean, it ties into a lot of the themes of the game, which we'll get to later. But yeah,
I wonder if they did that expecting to be like, maybe it's like this time around we give them names so it's harder for you to kill them. Like, I had no problems killing anybody.
I think
every time there was a scene where you had to mash square, I was like,
and also, did you notice that they take a little longer to die? Like, it's they kind of like, I don't know how much time you spend like actually like looking at them, like hovering over them, looking to die, but like if you like go up and stab someone, or if you shoot someone, it'll like blow their hand off, and they'll sit there and like writhe in agony, like with their their hand shooting out blood until they fall to the ground and finally die screaming.
Maybe when you shoot them point blank, there's more of a cinematic, but I had it where every time I did a stealth attack on somebody, when they hit the ground, they were done. I will admit that the whole stealth attack, that took way too long to completely execute, because the amount of times I would do that, I'm like, come on. And I would see somebody coming and they're like all the way over there, and by the time I'm just getting them on the ground, they're around the corner. I'm like, come on, let them go. That was a little iffy to me. I know they had a perk, I believe, that could make to make stealth kills a little bit quicker, and I even think I got that, but still I was like, this is taking too long. So you really have to time out everything. Have to make sure you have a full minute. There were times
when I would have to like go through and like plan out my plan of attack, especially with what are they called, the whistle people that I can't remember the name of.
Oh my god, dude, they pissed me off.
I've never loved and hated a villain so much.
Listen. When they, oh my God, I just saw red.
They're so cool. They're so
Listen.
cool because like you don't know what they're doing because you don't know when they whistle. You're like, what is he?
Oh
Did he
no,
see you?
I know what they're
Is he
doing.
signaling to someone? What's he
Their
doing?
whistle is like their version of like how like in the Batman games where it's like after a while you hear
Yeah,
people going checking in. Like once you like take one out, they start doing whistling, and I think they start to pick up on that there's not a whistle there.
yeah.
But I watched them and I knew that's what they were doing. But even after I took out like half of them and they started to whistle, I didn't see them change their pace. So I'm like, what's the point of the whistling if you're
Yeah.
not going to
I think
react
it's
to it?
just to mess with you more than if
I
you're not paying
think so
attention.
too.
Yeah.
But I swear to God, when I first was introduced to those, when you're like in the foliage and all of a sudden a stray arrow comes out, I died so many
Yeah.
times in that part because I would have it. Again, this is a character design. You have the ones out of the group that have the bow and arrows. They spotted me so easily. So like they will see unless you're laying down in the grass, they will spot you. And it's
Yeah.
from far away they can do it. The amount of times I would have a guy walk,
Yeah.
I'm laying down, they're walking my general direction, he's within 2 feet of me, and then he spots me. By the time I'm able to stand up and step into him to kill him, he's already like, I see you, draw my arrow. And then and once they start shooting at you, it's arrow, you stumble back, you
Yeah.
recover, arrow. Like I remember I got killed because they would spot me and go arrow, 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 and I
Yep.
couldn't move because of the animations and I would die.
Yeah.
I thought that pissed me off a little bit. I'm like, there's got to be a way to be able to get out of that scenario because I don't like when games get you stuck to the point where it's like that. It's it. You're done. Like
Yeah.
just wait until you die. I'm like, no, no,
Yeah.
no. Give me an option.
And then Seraphites is what they're called, by the way. I remember what the name of them. And they're
Sarah,
just
yeah, Seraphites. Yes,
just
okay.
as a
The crazy religious
just
people.
as a concept, I just loved them because it's this cult, which is just
I
so.
love the concept of it.
Yeah,
Don't get me
I
wrong.
love
It's
the
just
concept.
fighting them. I
No,
was like,
yeah,
dude,
yeah,
I hate
yeah.
these people.
I love, yeah. It was a great challenge though, and also that I loved just the whole concept of there being this war between the wolves and the Seraphites,
Yeah.
just kind of ongoing throughout the background of the story. Um, and it was really cool. And that first attack by them when you first run into them, where Ellie gets shot in the arm,
Yeah.
that scared the crap out of me.
No, dude, I'm right there with you because I was just walking and all of a sudden it comes out and like the controller shakes, I think. So when you get hit, you're like it hits you out of nowhere.
Yeah,
I jumped, I felt
yeah,
I almost dropped my controller. I was like, what
yeah,
happened? What? You know, like I was like kind of like just kind of half paying attention. All of a sudden that happened. And I am for some reason, every time I think there's a cutscene, my reaction is to mash square because that's what their go to. So when you get hit, your whole thing is to hold R1 so you can pull it out. But I'm sitting there going, I'm panicking. I went, square, square. I'm like, oh crap, R1, no. I was just like, I was
yeah.
messing it up because I was so caught off guard.
Yeah. And then I loved playing. I loved playing against them. I mean, it was very challenging, but I liked playing against them more than I did the wolves, just because it was a different type of challenge. It was more interesting.
I would agree,
Yeah.
especially when you have to like towards a certain point.
There
in
was
the
more
game, you're
strategy
actually,
to
like,
it.
yeah, they're very much so. And then again, that just falls into the fact that like I try to rely on stealth so I could get them, but every
Yeah.
time when I would get halfway through, and then someone would spot me, and then I'm just barely coming out of there alive. So it was very interesting. I liked the dynamic. I personally like it's a love hate because I'm glad that there was a challenge, but I'm also like, dude, how are these people so
Yeah.
goddamn impervious? Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's one of those things where I bash on it as I say it now, but in reality, if I had to go back and be
Yeah.
like, what would you change? I'm like, keep it how it is because I
Like,
love the
it's
challenge.
cool to have, like, I mean, obviously, like you have your traditional, just like you walk in, there's a bunch of militia people with guns standing there, you gotta figure out how to take them out. But it's like with these guys, they're very different from any other enemy that you can have throughout the game, and they're
Yeah.
very concentrated, they're very focused, and you have to figure out a way around them, because you're also doing this with limited ammo, so you have to figure out a way to do this.
Very limited. And that's the
Yeah.
last thing I want to touch on before we get on with the conversation. I felt, I mean, and it changes based on the difficulty, how much
Yeah.
loot you can get.
Not a lot of ammo. Not a lot of anything.
Not a lot of ammo at all. When I was given the bow, I was expecting, okay, if I loot enough, I'm always going to have enough of that. I could be
You're
stealthy
gonna get
as
like
hell.
2 or 3 at a time.
I always had 2 or 3, and half the time I couldn't figure out,
Yeah.
how much drop there was, so I would miss, or I would kill somebody, and I would
Yeah.
go over to their body, and like I don't know why it's a 50-50. No, I lie. It's an 80-20. Like if you get an arrow back or not, and
Yeah.
it was always no, the arrow's gone. I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like I wanted
I
to use
never
the
even
bow
bother
so
with the
badly.
arrow. Like,
That's what I'm saying. I think
I'm bad at it. I can't aim that well.
I don't. I think execution-wise, when it comes to combat and weapons, I personally feel I think it's really good overall. But I think when it comes to stuff like the bow and like really like stealthy equipment, I think they, in comparison to all the other stuff they decided to put in, they really kind of killed out how epic the bow could be in this game. I felt like you could easily play the game without it because if you try to use it, it's just more of a headache, and it just I think it sullies the experience a little bit, especially after the fact that you could be really good with it, but after you kill two people, you're out, and you expect to go get your bows back, and it's just no, you're out,
Yeah.
you're done. So like you can't even commit to that way of gameplay. So I think that's where they fell flat a little bit. With they made it a little uneven with I guess quality of like what kind of weapons you want to use and stuff like that. And then there's also the silences you can make, for your pistols, which I try to do as much as possible, so that way, in a dire situation, you can pop off a headshot without anybody hearing. But again, like the means to be stealthy, they really dwindle quick. So it was really rough. It
Yeah,
was it was really rough.
it was.
All right, guys, thank you tuning in once again to Nerd Culture, and thank you for watching the Last of Us kind of topic and debate about the gameplay. This is going to be part one. I just want to reiterate, if you enjoyed this, make sure to always like, comment, and subscribe, but make sure to go check out part two over on Lasting Light Media, run by my buddy Josh here, and make sure to follow them on all forms of social media, and make sure to follow us on all forms of social media at It's Nerd Culture. You can find us on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, all that good stuff. And also, I want you to tell me down in the comments what you thought of this discussion. How did you feel about the game? What were some mechanics you liked? What would you have done if you made the game? Anyways, guys, I appreciate it. Check out that part two, and we'll see you around next time. Take care, guys.